Okay, welcome to all of you amazing and wise men. I hope you're all wise this morning. I'm in morning, you might be in the evening or the afternoon because we have an international audience here, which is absolutely fantastic. I'd like to introduce you first to Philip Palmer. Wave your hand, Philip, over there on my left-hand corner, but of course on your screen it might be anywhere. Um, Philip is in England, and he is in a place called Albury. Anybody who knows England, it's on the east coast of England. And I'm delighted to see you all here. This is an extremely special event for me, and the first of two pieces of research. As you will note, you are all, as my father would say, you're all gentlemen. You are all of the male species, and you're all people who have heard of me or know me. Now, some of you I have not met before. Rodolfo, I haven't met before. Welcome. You are contact through Angel. Thank you, Angel. And also Clay, I haven't met you before. And I know you don't know about my work. The rest of you know something about me. Is that correct, all of you? Yes? Some to different degrees. And let's just see who this is. And this is, hi, Mohammed. This is Mohammed from Canada. So we've got Pakistan, UK, Canada, Portugal by pretense, because Tuscany looks like it's in Tuscany, and Kenny is actually British, but we've got a wonderful range here. We've got from Texas, place from Texas, George in Texas, I believe. We've got Philadelphia with David, California, anyway, and my British, so there's Philip, there's Paul and Gary and Kenny, who's the other Brit. We've got Australia, and I'm very appreciative of Alan and Scott. Where's Scott? They're from Australia. So it is actually 1 o'clock in the morning, is that right? Okay, so apart from anything else, really, really welcome. I think you're very brave to be up in the middle of the night. Thank you. One of the things is this is a very, very select group of men, and I believe that you're all wise and that you're all looking, as we are, to a global shift of consciousness about how men and women and all the diversities come into that, get involved in a new narrative. I believe we have an opportunity now to resolve some of the, dare I say, arguments and debacles over many centuries. And it is very specifically that I invited only men today, because I want to understand your viewpoint on the research and the approach that we take. And when I say we, Philip and myself and others who form Corporate Art International, but really what we're focused on here is what I call gender dynamics intelligence. So for me, it's the intelligence between men and women, and the aspects of masculine and feminine energy that we bring into our activities, our behavior, our conversations, everything that we do in the world. And one of the things I'd like to talk about is real synergy. So in order to have this coming together for a global shift, we need to value our differences. So as you know, there's no other women here today. In this instance, I represent what I believe I know about my sisters. But we have got different types of men here. And Philip and I have been working on this together for over 20 years. So Philip is the second person in the world who knows as much about the gender dynamics map, which I'm going to show you very shortly, as I do. Kenny asked very rightly, how would I like you to be in this session? I would like you to be part of it, but we are great in number. So if I either called you to say something or put your hand up, rather than us all talk over each other, there's some very, very valuable connections here for all of you, because as I think there is, maybe 15% of the world is engaged in a bright and changed new future. So we are part of the wise ones. I believe we have a higher consciousness level about what's going on. So I'm going to invite Philip just to say a brief word. If you would introduce yourself, Philip, and say why you and I are here doing this. That will help me, give me a place to pause.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Philip. I met Pauline in 1999, which is a huge long time ago now, and we clicked instantly. We met very by chance with a group of people that I chose to join. I wasn't absolutely certain I wanted to join this particular group, but I did join it, and I met Pauline at that, and it was a very synergistic time for me, and hugely coincidental in terms of the number of people that were in this group, who I then went on to work with in various guises over the years, and several of whom, I was just trying to think if I knew how many, but several I'm still in touch with and see on a regular basis. So that suggests to me there was some synchronicity going on. And in terms of my outlook on life, it's very much based on synchronistic occurrences. I don't believe in luck. It is all about fate and synchronicity coming together at the right time. I have a very strange view, is the right word, because lots of people question how I come to the conclusions that I arrive at, and I'm very happy that they do that. So I have a very strange view on the way it is that the world works, which helps me to understand why the awfulness that occurs in the world occurs the way that it does, and why the rest of the world allows such things to consistently occur. And on that basis, it sits very neatly for me with gender dynamics, because it looks at the way in which power is manifested by men and women in various positions around the world for either personal or public gain, where we're looking at why do people operate the way they do to achieve what they're looking to achieve, and how can we as this group use the gender dynamics map to ensure that we help everyone understand how maybe changes in behaviour, theirs and others, would actually make the world a much better place for everyone to be in. I think I'll leave it there for now, having blasted you with stuff about me.
So thank you, Philip. The goal is to look forward. Many of you have come to an event that I run, which is called Create Our Future Together. My belief is that we need to look forward in order to come back to the present. So the future, I see there that men and women of all diversities and all differences will be working in a synergetic way to form new cultures where we're engaged, we're inclusive, we understand compassion, love, respect each other. We know that that's not happening out there at the moment. So why divide it by men and women? Because in my experience of doing programs around gender dynamics, there has always been a difference between men and women. So if my first question to you is, are men and women different? I hope you would all say yes. We have a lot of similarities, but essentially we are biologically different. So the reference we do with the map is before we look at the diversities of sexual orientation or culture, generation, religion, any other diverse issues. And it is part of the formation of life itself. So in order to engage you, and then also hear your voice, I want to ask you a very simple first question, and each of you to share, how would you describe men? So what I'd love you to do is, I don't know how you see the screen, but I will go around the screen. So just say your name, where you're from, and one descriptive word for men today. Is that all right? Is that clear? You okay with this? And it will become clear when we ask the next question. So if I would, I'll invite, on my screen next to me is actually Clay. So Clay, would you just say your name and where you're living and,
Yes.
and your one word to describe men?
My name is Clay Boykin and I'm from Austin, Texas. My one word is wounded.
Wounded. Okay. I'm just going to write them on here. Next along my line is Alan in Australia.
Alan Stevens. I'm in Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. I would say confused.
Okay. Next on my line is Scott.
Morning all, Scott from Melbourne. My one word to describe how I feel about Men in the Minute would be proud.
Kenny, you're next on my screen.
My name's Kenny Marmalade Cruz. I live in London, and the first word that crossed my mind was testosterone.
Okay, Knut. Can't hear you. I can't hear you.
You're muted.
Sorry. My name is Knut, originally from Norway. And the first coming up for me, maybe because I have discussed this so often with Pauline, the square and the circle. So the square is my word.
Square. Okay. Cameron R.
Yes, my name is Kamran. I'm from Islamabad, Pakistan. And the first word that comes to my mind when it is thinking of men is discovery.
Discovery. Thank you. Paul in England. You're unmute.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you now, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So the first word is warrior.
Warrior. Cameron.
Kamran Ali Khan from Pakistan, Karachi. The first word which comes to me is seeker.
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 Rodolfo.
Hi, I'm from Costa Rica, and the word that comes to mind is uncovering.
Courage.
Uncovering.
Sorry.
Uncovering, Pauline.
Okay. Thank
Uncover.
you. Gerard.
Gerard Charles. I'm in Houston, Texas. Provider. Will be my word. Provider.
David.
Hi, I'm David from Pittsburgh, and the first word that comes to my mind is adventurous.
Adventurous. Angel.
Thank you, Pauline. I'm originally from Barcelona, but I live in Plano, Texas, and the word is power.
Power. And Mohammed.
Good day, everyone. Mohammed from London, Ontario, Canada. Full disclosure, many words came to mind, but the one that surfaced to my spirit is ally.
Ally. And Philip, what's yours?
Strong.
Strong. Thank you. Now we have another.
Have you missed Gary? Where's Gary?
Gary. Oh, there. Sorry, Gary. Sorry.
And Lloyd, I believe.
Ah.
Did you disappear on me and come back? Oh, and Lloyd. Sorry, Gary. What was your word?
Right now, I'd say afraid.
Afraid. And Lloyd.
Yeah, I had a positive spin to it. It's more on the changing. I mean, we wouldn't be here today if men wouldn't have been changing over the last couple of decades at least.
Okay, so as a fantastic range of both strong words and also querying words, that afraid and confused, wounded, and yet there's warrior and seeker. And some of the traditional words that men will say in these situations is ego and strong and aggressive, but there's some very inquiring words. So another quick round, and this is going to go again, is what's your one word for women? So Clay. What are women today?
Rising.
Rising. Thank you. Alan.
Concerned.
Concerned. Thank you. Scott.
Unsure.
Unsure. Kenny.
I can't do one word. It's different hormones.
That's okay. Knut.
Sensual.
Sexual. Thank you. Cameron R.
Sensual, ikke sexual, but sensual.
Sensual. Cameron R.
I thought of a word, but now, but I think a woman is, it's love, but it's not love in its usual sense. Love. Okay.
Okay. The other another Cameron. Cameron R. Can't hear you. Unmute.
Partner.
Sorry?
Partner.
Partner.
Partner. Yeah.
Partner. Paul.
Feminine.
Feminine. Rodolfo.
Power.
Power. Gary.
Leadership.
Leadership. Lloyd.
Empathy.
Sorry, I didn't catch it.
Empathy.
Empathy, yes. Gerard.
Empowerment.
Empowerment, thank you. David.
Nurturer.
Nurturer. Angel.
Heart.
Apologies, sorry, Angel.
Heart. Heart.
Kind. And Mohammed.
No, heart. Heart.
Heart, sorry.
Heart. Sorry.
Mohammed.
Nurturing.
Sorry?
Nurturing.
Nurturing. Philip.
Untapped.
Untapped. Okay, you won't be able to read my writing, but you've listened to all those words. I did ask everybody, didn't I? Thank you. The flavor of the two lists are very different. And what will be fascinating is when I ask all the women next week when they meet on their session, and then we will, with your permission, both parties, we will share what those words are with each other. Because in my experience of doing this and dividing that first layer is just male and female, before we get to the masculine and feminine energy, we get a very different list. Did you feel the difference in the lists? With the women rising, concerned, unsure, hormonal, sensual, love, partner, feminine, power, leadership, empathy, empowerment, nurturing, heart, untapped. Very different energies to wounded, confused, proud, testosterone, square, discovery, warrior, seeker, uncovered, provider, adventurer, power, ally, strong, afraid, changing. I've run this exercise so many times with groups. I did it in Malaysia with men and women in the Ministry of Women, a Muslim group. I've done it with English groups. So it's not about our religion or our differences in other aspects, but these energies are very different. So I would like to share with you, Mohammed says here, women are inward and men are outward. So as I'm going to share with you my fundamental map and then get some discussion going about how we understand these differences, because in coming together, we need a language, a conversation. What I'd like you to do is to write any details you want to, and also your own details in the chat so that you all connect with each other. Because our empowerment across the world is what is important in this global shift. And I'm very passionate about this. Why did I design a map? Because I'm a certain type of woman. I'm a map kind of woman. So I've got a very, dare I say, logical mind. I'm a mathematician. I love geometry. I love mapping. And I also wanted to understand about myself as a female when I was a teenager. I would rather be climbing trees than making cakes with my mum. maybe that's not one difference, but I really got to understand my sisters when I was in the image world in the 90s. And what I observed was that women were different types of women, but we all had a similarity, which was aligned to that set of words that you shared. What I discovered was that there was a range of women, and there was a way of assessing whether we were more masculine or more feminine in our energy, but we were all female. So in my observations of men being all male, and as I think Kenny put in, was it testosterone, there is a certain way that you operate. So I was looking at how do men operate and how do women operate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my map on the board here. Some of you have seen this before, but just to observe why I developed it. And the goal for you is to understand what kind of conversation we can have on the map that will help both men and women understand each other, not to change each other. And I was interested that, I think it was Alan, you used the word confused for men. I did some research, which some of you came on. I interviewed men about men 2 years ago. And one of the major features was that men said they were a bit confused about what women really want and what the world really wanted of them. So that's come through again in that piece. So for you, those who've seen this before, remember that anybody who hasn't. So as a mapper, I said, how do we illustrate men? And this is an illustration. I put men into a square. Why do I put men into a square? Because you guys are very straightforward. You tend to want to get the task done. So I'm very aware of that today. We want to do one thing at a time. So bear with me. We put you in the square. So in this square, the M stands for male. It could stand for men as well, but it's the male biology, men. The reason I wanted to use the F for women is to produce a code. So the men are in the square and women are in a circle. So if you look at the set of words you gave me, all those words sit inside that square. And the square is illustrative. It's illustrative of the operating pattern of men. And I would say men, as we know, often think in boxes. Now, though there are differences between many range of men, but generally that's the baseline. Women are much more circular. So if I looked at this as an operating system, you might align the square to a PC and the circle to a Mac. And my goal was to understand if we're different, but we're also human, so we have a similarity in terms of our beingness in the world. How can we differentiate the baseline operating pattern? And this will relate to how we behave, how we talk, how we converse, how we create conversations. Are you with me so far? Yes? So if I looked at this, I felt, how do I understand myself as a woman? So let me ask you a question, and this is just a nod or a raise. Are all men the same? No. So are all women the same? No. So what we're looking at is two steps. The first step is what's the operating pattern? And the second step is then how do we activate within our operating pattern? So for me, as I told you, I knew that I had this masculine energy. I'm in my head often more than in my heart. So I'm in my heart in terms of being all the things that you said about women. So I thought, right, I've got to circuit the whole operating system. We've got two operating patterns and we've got a circuit that holds the two operating patterns, okay? So in that, the outer circle, this is masculine, and this is feminine. So this is M, and this is F. So you can start seeing where I was going with this. I wanted a code. I wanted a code not to define people and leave them in one place, but have a place where I could start in order to see everybody else in my world. So as I told you, I'm a masculine-minded female. So I'm a masculine energy in this operating pattern. So I become an MF. Now we said lots of women are different to me. And so the women who are feminine-minded females are FF. So they're down here. Now, of course, there's anybody in between. There's a range of people in between. Now, what about you men? So therefore, I looked at men and I realized there are masculine-minded men and there are feminine-minded men. So the person that I always quote as a feminine-minded male, well known in the world, is Nelson Mandela. I think he portrayed the characteristics, very testosterone male, but he had that softness about him and a high level of intuition in the way that he dealt with his world. And then we have masculine men in the world who can be wise or unwise. Every man can be wise or unwise, and every woman can be wise or unwise. Do you follow me so far? So if you have here an MM, and down here we have an FM. And the goal with this is not to be rigid about it, but what I wanted to know was, if I'm here, how do I deal with the MM? How do I deal with the FM? How do I deal with all my other sisters? And my challenge came from my original need to understand my own gender. Are you with me so far? Yeah. Okay, so the symbolism in here, for me, helped me to understand conversation and the way that we deal with each other. So the square is made up of straight lines and the circle is made up of curves. So conversation can be very straight line and conversation can be very curved. And so we've got aspects in here of if our intention is to create real synergy so that we understand the baseline and the characteristics of people in this arena. First step is to know where we are. The second step is to know who else is in the room. So before I invite you into this conversation, let's explore just quickly who we might know. I hate to use political illustrations because this is nothing to do with politics, but there are some well-known characters out there. So in terms of understanding different types of women, potentially you all know the character Margaret Thatcher, do you? You know her? Yes. Do you also know Chancellor Angela Merkel? Yes. So you can picture those two women on the screen together. Both strong women, both leaders, but Angela Merkel is more of an MF, like me here, and Margaret Thatcher is more of an FF. Now, I always get a challenge from my sisters about this, but if you think about her, she was very sovereign in her approach to how she was a leader. So I call the FF a sovereign and the MF a magician. The magician is in her head, the sovereign is in her heart. So what do I call the men? With the men, the MM is the ruler. He's the archetype he's very direct, he's a bullet point man, and he's in that, I'm in that square, I'm in an intention of me. The FM is somebody who is a philosopher. He's more of a thinker-feeler, and I think many of you are FMs. You may be wondering where you are on the map, but one of the things for certain is you're all in the square. I'm going to invite Philip just to share where he is on this map, so to just get an example of a known male point of view. Philip.
Yeah, so I'm in the MM, and for some people that's a bit of a challenge because I can come across as an FM, but I'm distinctly MM because I need things to move on. I want things sorted quickly. I just need a bullet point. I need to know what is expected of me, how I'm meant to do it. If I'm in charge of that bit, I'll sort that out. But if someone wants it a certain way, I need to know that. And I want to get through whatever the situation is or the issue is and get an outcome. So when things are fine, when there's no real pressure and there's plenty of planning time and plenty of outcome time, things run along very nicely. I let people have their free rein, they work in their own way, and the outcome comes together. In a stress scenario where time is limited, where outputs are instantly required, I revert to MM. I tell people how I want them to do things. I insist that they get things done in the way I want them done, and I put the time pressure on so that we get it done on time. And that's how my MM manifests.
So who would like to comment?
Just one question here before we move on to, are we referring to, can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Are you referring, Philip, to your work and professional behavior as being MM versus FM, or in your free time as well? When you speak about being an MM, you're speaking about task-oriented, project-oriented, and something that you will be in charge of, etc.
Yeah.
This seems to be very professional, but on a day-to-day, is your mind going towards a profession? I mean, I'm just wondering if there's a different spectrum around these definitions.
No. I'm MM in my life as well. So if I've got a group of friends around me and we're trying to decide where to go, and 10 minutes in, there's huge discussion, I've had enough. I just wanted to make a decision about where we're going. I don't want 10 minutes of discussion about where we should go and 64 options. I want 3 options, we choose one. So if I organize the Christmas lunch for an office outing, for example, I don't do that anymore, but when I used to, there were 3 options and 2 dates. That was it. Six choices was enough. Other people would do it, there'd be 19 options, lots and lots of dates. Just ignore it and say, well, you choose it and I'll come along when you've decided what it is. So it's not a switch on, switch off. It's something that's in my blood and the way I operate.
I think one of the things to note, and thank you for the question, Philip and Lloyd, is that I believe in studying this over the last 20 years is we have a learned behavior pattern which we may take on in order to play a role. And this has happened a lot for women who have felt that they need to act in that, like a man in a box, but actually they can be using masculine energy. So the masculine energy is different to the maleness. So where Philip's saying he's MM, he's got both. So it'll be everywhere, and it will appear. So as an MF myself, I'm female. So when I'm with my female friends, I am, to some people may look like I'm doing feminine activities, but it's female activities with a masculine preference. So what we're doing here is we're saying the operating pattern is core to everywhere in your life. Your natural place where the energy is as MM or FM will change for situations. So for those of you who I know are naturally more intuitive-minded male, you may be in a situation where you rank up the masculine energy in order to do something. I want to just give you an example of, and I hope this helps you to relate to it. I was in conversation with a gentleman who, it wasn't a work situation, it was, and I just drew out the map very quickly, a box, circle, boom, 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 all the things. And he said, oh, right, fine, yeah, I'm an MM, can't stand those FMs, I think they're wimps. I don't like working with FM women because they're too bossy, and I quite like FFs. And it was like boom, 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 boom. He just saw the map, decided what he wanted to be, and went away with it. Now that's, the intention of the map is not necessarily to do that, because I want us to get to a more synergetic place of understanding each other. But it gave me a really clear indication of that MM decision-making process. It was very square, very in the box, very, that's what I want. The FM, which many of you will be because you are here today seeking to understand this scenario, have that high intuition level, and therefore you see the world in a different way to the MM. My goal in doing this piece of research today and then with the women next week is to start understanding how can we accept our differences within gender, within that box, and the women within the circle, so that we can then come together. I was going to ask Gary, who I know is you and I have discussed your being in FM. How do you see that when you're with an MM? Is there a challenge?
Yes, generally. Simple answer. Yeah.
And how do you deal with it? I think that is what I want to understand, definitely from men, is how can we appeal if in many situations, and I welcome Boris here, that we're looking at how do we tackle the MM who is maybe potentially stuck in how to deal with this very emotional situation of change in the world. And he's very task focused, more so than the rest of you. And he's going, no, just give me the answer, as Philip said. And just as an example, when I did my research with 55 men, maybe 10 of them were MMs, the rest were FMs. Many of the FMs said, I don't really want to be in a room full of testosterone MMs. How do we deal with a world which potentially is run by MMs? So if you want, I'm asking Gary because I know, but any of you would like to make a statement on this, then put your hand up. Is there anything you want to say on that, Gary?
No, just super quick for me. I think where we are right now, though, is yes, it's historically for me with a lack of understanding been difficult to deal with because I didn't have that FM understanding, which is what's really good about your work. I think a lot of what this is about is just time, is that we don't give ourselves permission to slow down, to hear and sense one another. And I think that is the number one barrier to understanding. Once you understand there's an MM scenario, it's, do you give yourself time to understand and empathize with one another, or do you just keep cracking the whip based on what you think right looks like? So I would say, but I think that for me is the number one critical point, is like whatever you do with your map, if we're not giving ourselves permission to slow down and hear one another, like it's almost irrelevant.
Okay, that's a really good point. And just to be aware, for many of you may know this or not, but the scenario that I talk about with a magical conversation, which is a space, even in a corporate environment where you don't have judgment, you come in to look at a topic without judgment, just with your experiences, was what we're doing today, is what is your experience as a man when you look at this subject and work out how we get to a place of synergy between men and women, let alone between men and different types of men. How can we do that? I'm just reading what Paul said. Yeah, Kenny?
If I can add something to this, because I think from my perspective, I don't know if you agree, but I'm more of the MM than I'm the MF, if that makes sense. And I think, just looking introspectively, I think maturity, I'm going to use that word, is what's important here. When I was a lot younger, I had a lack of maturity. And so it was my way or the highway. I didn't give a crap. I just told people this is how it's going to work. And they just went along, or they didn't, right? I think that's over time changed. And the way that that change has occurred is because I realized over my lifetime that collaboration is much more important, and being able to engage with others. And so I started to view things in a different perspective. And I moved more centrist, if that makes sense. I moved closer to the middle between the MM and the MF, right? And that's given me a different perspective on how I operate day to day and engage with others. And so where we talked about this before, in my mind, I see three types of people in the world, right? Inclusive, exclusive, and divisive. And I'm perfectly good with inclusive and exclusive people. I just can't deal with divisive people. So that's just my framework for it. But the idea here is the collaboration is what drives me to be more understanding, if that's the best way to put it.
Yes. Okay. Who would like to comment? I know Kenny put his hand up. What would you like to say, Kenny?
I feel that whether it's male or female, masculine or feminine, the bottom line for me is if I can meet myself here, then I can meet the other person. And if I can't, then I need to find someone else that can. So I pass it on to speak in their language. I have, I guess, a judgment where I believe that a certain amount of MMs might come from immature male and maybe fear, competition, etc., etc. Not all by any means, but a certain amount where that's power over rather than empowered and able to share power. But by no means all, because I know that people who know me personally or work with me professionally can project that I'm enraged when I come from my MM just because I'm being straight. And that's more, you know, if I work with someone personally and then they take me into my business and there's another side to me, it can be quite jarring. So it's different parts for different people, for different situations. And I'm not going to assume that I can meet all people all the time, including myself. And for me, this is where delegation comes in. And in the face of danger, then the MM is out. And there's not really a lot to think about. In the place of where there's a need for tenderness or to hold a loving space, and it could be because of a death or an accident or something,
yes,
then that part of me, the more mature male that can include the feminine and the masculine, will come out.
Yes. Well, that's interesting because, of course, I shouldn't make an assumption, but I'm assuming that all of you are enlightened so that you understand there's masculine and feminine energy in all of us. So in a way, we talk about how do we engage the unenlightened who is in fear because of our crisis and the pandemic and not wanting to open up to the emotional aspect. So when we focus on an unenlightened MM, so I often say that if you look at the map, the unenlightened MM can potentially be a bully. The unenlightened FM can be a wimp. The unenlightened FF can be a victim. And the unenlightened MF, like me, can be the bitch. Because we recognize bad behavior. And what we want to do is we want to take them towards the central point of saying, meet me as I am, but let's understand different situations for different things. I think what you're saying, Kenny, is when we're under stress, I see it that when we're under stress, we go to our corner. So when I'm under stress with my sisters and they're being annoyingly chit-chatty and I want action, I go to my, oh, I'm out of here, you know. So it's what you refer to. Cameron, yes, Cameron K.
I was wondering, how do we define circular thinking to start with?
How do we define circular thinking? And it's a really good question. I'm into shapes. That's why I did this. So I see everything as shaped. If you think about it, everything in our world is made of straight lines and curved. If you put straight lines together, you get a square and then you get a box. If you put curved lines together, you get a circle, you get a sphere, you get an obelisk. So conversation and behavior can be straight line and it can be curved. So when an MM is being phrased straight lined and potentially totally directive, and he comes into as a circle of people with women who want to be more circular, he's batting in a straight line conversation into a circular one. So when I'm talking with women, I often encourage them to recognize that we need to honor each other. The circular nature of conversation for women needs to honor the straight line conversation of men on occasion. It's what I think you're referring to, Kenny, is that there are situations when you up into your MM. And that's what, Boris, you're saying is that all of you are M. Your preference is natural and learned and also applied. So there may be situations where you become more and others where you go into more FM, but your natural place will be one. Mohammed's in Canada.
Yes, and I see it, to build on what my colleagues are saying, I see it too as whether we're in stress or comfort, we're going to push towards our reset zone or our default zone. So, whether we're pushing, because, as Philip and Kenny were saying, we're going to go to a certain place that is our comfortable place when we get stressed, but I think we also start from that place. So I really think it's a matter of awareness that if this is my comfort zone, if this is my default stress zone, why do I behave this way? Why is the other person behaving this way? Because my comfort zone is, I'd say an MF, but I lean to grow towards an MF with empathy and, as the brothers were saying about listening. But you get me in a corner and guess where I'll go, right? MM. And so I think it's having that awareness of what triggers me to go into a particular area and where do I need to go. And, it's not 100%, but most of the time, if I impulsively will react in a certain way, I'll push myself to react in, either the opposite or a less pronounced, less of my comfort, because I know that my default zone is going to be one that is not as open and embracing to the MMs or the MFs, right? And to the others out there, right? So I think it's a matter of just that awareness of where do I go, where do I need to go, and where does the other want to go as well.
So it's definitely about awareness. I think, Cameron can, and then Alan. So Cameron can, what was your...
My question was fundamental in the sense that before labeling or before getting ourselves boxed into MF or FM or whatever the four things are, I don't know, perhaps in another meeting like this, the circular thinking has its own advantages, because generally it is perceived that when you're thinking in straight lines and in boxes, you are pinpointing towards a particular solution, or you are trying to solve a particular piece of a problem professionally most of the time. But then the intuitive thinking and the thinking which leads one to discover himself or herself and inside, and then there are levels at which you discover yourself, and in that process of discovery you are actually starting connecting with the cosmic consciousness and all things like that. We don't have time to discuss it. That circular level of thinking is not, to me, it's a different thought process rather than in a straight line thought process, and both processes have their place in while you're operating in this world.
Yes.
Every process has its place. So it cannot be that women are circular and men are straight, but it depends upon the situation. This is my point of view. I can extend on it, but I think let's stop at this point.
Yes, and obviously this is this topic is big, so this is the starting point. Alan, what were you going to say? But thank you, Cameron.
Okay, as Mohammed was saying, that when we start out, when we're in comfort and when we're stressed, we come from that same place. But when we come from that same place, when we're at comfort, we're using the positive side of that energy. And when we're in stress, we go to that negative side of that energy. The rest of the time, when we're in neither of those states, when we're, use enlightened as a possible word, we're more focused on other people, we're able to connect with them, and therefore we can travel into the other areas. But as soon as we get stressed, we're going to go back to the negative side of our location. But when we're happy, we're going to express the positive side of that. And then we get challenged, straight back in. But we can go out and deal with other people at their level, the more that we're aware of them. Because you want to connect with somebody, you have to connect with them, not with you, as Kenny was saying before.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the thing is that we're all at an advantage because we're all proactive, thinking, wise, intuitive. We're sensitive to this. So even if Boris is more MM and Philip is more MM, we're in the space of concern for a future and this global shift. So my challenge is how do we engage and hook in the person, say the MM, who's totally unwise to what this is about. He has a very rigid view about what women are, because we know that women are still marginalized in the world and that we still aren't in parity. And we have these classic things written out, you know, every decision should be a man and a woman doing it together. Is that true? Not necessarily. There are lots of things that we can discuss still. My challenge today is, what I want is a new narrative, is to get people to that place where, rather than being in stress when they're talking about this and arguing, they're coming to a place where we can embrace masculine and feminine energy into the structure of our society ahead. I.e., we need the building blocks, the square, we need the circle of the relation, and it's an ongoing relationship of integration between the two things. Knut, you haven't said anything. Would you like to say something? And then Paul. Knut?
I think we talk about this consciousness shift, and it will affect every level in society, both locally and globally. And I think that we all need to change. That is a part of the consciousness shift. If we think within the square, we think within the circle, women often, if they walk in circle, they never get out of it. And men, if they're very rigid, they are so rigid that they try to solve everything. But our challenge now is outside, in the outer circle. So whatsoever the kind of personality or identity we have now, we need to go out of the box. We need to find a way of organizing these different types so we can start to work together from this higher perspective, as also Cameron, touched, because I think that is a part of this, that the cosmic consciousness is the synergy. When we tap into that, then we learn to think in circles or circular thinking, or we have to have the direction that is in the square to manifest something. But we need to listen more to the feminine. That's why we need more feminine leadership.
And we're going to go to Paul in a minute, but I just want to remind you, because it's not very clear on here, but the major circle is the 360 degree in which the two operating patterns are in. And that's where I think we need to get to, is to remember that we're all inside a complete issue together. Paul, you had your hand up, and then we'll go to Clay. But Paul?
I think there's a number of things. I think one of the fundamental stumbling blocks is the need to objectify. Objectifying simply by gender, by applying a label, creates a barrier immediately. And we need to get past this objectification and find a different way of doing that. Number one. Number two, I think you referred to building blocks, Pauline. I think emotional literacy, the ability to, broadly speaking, and I'm sweeping generalization here, have three emotions: happy, sad, and pissed off. And we need to
happy, sad, pissed off.
And we need to get beyond that into widening emotional literacy, and learning to understand the fear that arises when expressing some emotions that we're not familiar. So there's the feeling of that sits inside the body, and why that's uncomfortable, and allowing space for that discomfort to be expressed and understood. That it's okay, because as we've said, MMs live in their heads. They don't necessarily live in their bodies. They don't live in their bodies for a reason. And one of those reasons, although it's not the only reason, is because it's not safe, because it's uncomfortable, and I don't understand what the hell is going on in my body. And therefore I'm going to stay as far away from that as possible and dissociate from it. And it's this dissociation that gives us a problem. And then lastly, as many people have said, I think context is everything. And I think whatever the context, we need to, as has been shown by processes like deep democracy, that you can have So deep democracy arises at the end of apartheid South Africa. Whites hand over power to the black majority. Bunch of black people running around very, very pissed off with white people and for everything that's happened prior to being given power. How the hell do you resolve that and not have people killing each other? Well, deep democracy allows the ability to explore and examine the no with skillful facilitation in such a way that we can understand and express the no and go, the reason no is this, this, and this. Okay, fine, good. Do you feel you're heard? Do you feel you're understood? Now, what would it take to actually turn no into yes? And to have that as a collective conversation where everybody around the table plays by the rules of not objectifying and acknowledging the need for greater emotional literacy and the arising discomfort of that. But that's a process of education, and that's not going to happen overnight. That's not going to happen overnight in a meeting room. So that's my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I just want to have a quick word from Clay then. We're just aware of the time, but Clay, you wanted to say something. But what's very important here is that this is an ongoing conversation to bring, a sense of equality for all of us. So Clay, what was your thought?
Yes, very quickly, of course, it's very situationally based. And if I'm looking in a business environment or organizational environment, it's getting upstream from it. It's the culture that's established there. And it's a recognition that both women and men are wounded by the system that we're all in. It could be called the patriarchy, if you will. What I have learned is we can create a common vision using a servant leadership type model. And if we have people pointing into the same direction, recognizing that we're all wounded, then you have two endpoints there and the basis from which to use something more like situational leadership on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
So it's creating this environment so that when two people come together, whatever their orientation is, they have the common ground. Then they have half a chance of being successful in their interactions.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, this is a huge topic. And we're 3 minutes to the hour, so I'm very aware of that. And we haven't all had a word, but anybody who wants to say something, then put your hand up. But my focus is that if I look at the situation in the world, women are still marginalized in terms of being a partnership in the world in a true sense. So though we're merging into this higher consciousness where my vision and dream is that we don't have these conversations in a way because we've all become enlightened and we're not destroying each other on these bases. We need the masculine, we need the feminine. And the thing with this map is that we're all inside the bigger circle. We're all inside that. And Cameron, I know you have to leave, so I really appreciate you being here because the value of you all is enormous. And I would like to carry on this conversation after we have the conversation with all the women, because their take on it is going to be different in terms of how they identify the words and the circuit. But my dream is that we're all on this map together. And I've worked with lesbian groups, with trans clients, with all sexual orientations, with different cultures, with different generations. And the fundamental is to start with its basis. So rather than dividing by gender, we're just using it as a starting place to understand our situational behavior. Does it make sense? In order to understand when it goes wrong. So I know that many women will go, yeah, but men are this, da, 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 da. And I'm saying, no, we got to value the difference. If we value what men are doing or what their operating patterns are, and men actually understand our differences, then we're all inside the bigger circuit. We're all in there together. So, well, let's just ask Scott, do you want to say something, Scott? You haven't had a word. Anybody who's not said anything, if you want to have a quick, one word or something that you want to say before the hour.
Super quick. Like it's fantastic. The opportunity to actually discuss differences, no matter what they are, allows us to create more awareness and acceptance of each other, which will bring us all together as a whole. I struggle with labels. I really struggle with it, because when you get put into a hole, it challenges yourself, but it does allow for other people to communicate with you. So to understand the label is actually the secret to actually the acceptance. And I'm stumbling a little bit, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but if you can gather, if you can sort of put together where I'm at, any opportunity to actually understand each other better is a great opportunity to bring us all together.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if we do that in our world, if we get to leaders of businesses which are very influential in changing our society economically, my dream is, working with Boris, with my CEO, is to get CEOs to really understand, especially if they're in an mindset, that their people around them can help them get through this crisis, but they need to acknowledge them as different types of people around the table. And often they don't. So we want to, I agree, Paul, we want to remove labels, but we also need to know and identify where we are. And I will find that with my sisters, as I will with my brothers and all of you, is that I get to understand you. I can adapt my conversation, a bit like being kinesthetic or visual or auditory. So before we all go, I just want you to know that there's a physicality aspect to this, which I haven't alluded to, but you will find out more about it. There's a way of assessing types at a core level in order to start the conversation. As we get to an enlightenment level of higher consciousness, those differences start becoming less important, because we are tuning in. You tune into somebody who's auditory or kinesthetic, even if you're not that. You start being the magician in the room, having magical conversations in order to understand everybody. So my dream is that businesses will be run by men and women together of different types, but not necessarily 50-50. It's not about numbers, it's about energies coming together. And it's about cultures, as Clay referred to, about developing cultures and each culture being different. But that we need to understand each other. And this map is something that I have a passion about. And I want to ask you all if you can help me to spread the word on this and how we actually send the message out. Currently, we've written an ebook with Boris and my CEO that we're going to send out. Various of you, like Alan works with the Campfire Project, Kenny works with men in England, Scott, you work with men's groups. I want you to get to know each other as well, because, and the cat. And I know some of you haven't, but I really want you to connect with each other, because you're all powerful part of the 15% of the world that is going in the right direction. Anybody else want to have a last one word? We're on the hour and we're past, so if you have to leave, I really, really appreciate you being here. But if there's anybody who wants to take one more word.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. That's great.
Thank you, Pauline.
That was brilliant. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to continue this conversation offline as well with any of you. Is that for Philip and I, we want to, and certainly with Boris and the work we're doing with my CEO, is to get into that conversation to enlighten men. I work with women as well and bring men and women together. And my last thought is that women talk a lot about empowerment, and I think it's women empower men. And I think women, I'm working a lot with women to help them understand that they need to understand all of you guys as well, and the amazing work that you're doing. This is just a starting point. It's a baseline map. It's a GPS for a narrative that's to be different in the future. And that's my dream, to work with all of you in order to spread that word out there to other people. Any final word, Philip?
Pauline, do you have a schedule on which the next meeting is going to happen? Where you
I will get back to you all. I'm doing one with the women next Monday, and I want to look at their data, what they say about this, and then we'll bring it together in, say, a month's time. Would that work for you guys? I want you to be my cohort of wise men in the world, that we go out and we spread the word about this, because we need to change the world. The world needs us, all of us, with our wisdom and our ability. So this is just a starting point for the code for a language that we will all share. Apologies, Philip. Last question, last statement from you, where everybody's going.
Just to say thank you to everyone. We are now over time, so thank you for putting up with that as well. and hope to see you all again on another one of these Zoom meetings.
So that's why I have Philip here, because he's an MM and he's very good at doing this. Thank you for coming. We'll let you know next time, and I will send you the recording. Please bring back your thoughts on that. And
thank you.
And everything there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Pauline.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Pauline.
Good to see you, Kenny.
Same. Big
Yes,
time.
stay there.
We
Thank you,
behave,
Kenny,
Dave.
for coming off your holiday. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. I'll
And
see if I can do another holiday for the next one.
Okay.
Keep the pattern.
You need someone to carry your bags, Kenny?
Thank you, Rodolfo, for coming. I know we didn't get a chance to speak, and thank you, Angel. We'll talk more after this. Thank you. Thank you, Boris.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
Talk later.
I'll see you later, Boris, and I'll see you later, Knut. And thank you, Angel. I really appreciate you.
Hey, Pauline, just one question. I connected with my computer because I just got the internet back. So sorry for going in and out so many times, but I would love to have all the contact details. I couldn't get from my cell phone any contact detail from anybody.
Don't worry. I will post the recording back to everybody and all the details. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay, because I tried to download the chat, but as I joined the last, I couldn't download the chat.
Don't worry, I'll save
This
it.
was an amazing meeting, Pauline, it was an amazing meeting. It was incredible, really. Congratulations to you, Philip.
Thank you for that, Angel, because to me, this is such an important step forward. And with the women next week, it will be fascinating to see what they say as well. So I really appreciate you being here, and thank you. And we will talk more.
Of course, anytime. Thank you, Philip. Nice to meet you, Scott. Nice to meet you all. Bye-bye.